Hey guys. Um, it's been a while, right? Like I haven't recorded any new content in a minute, especially not ADV related, right? Or ADVOU related at least. I don't know. I don't remember when the last time I made a main channel ADVOU video was. And it's been for good reason. School, kind of kicking my ass recently. Um is what it is. I'm a busy guy, but I'm kind of feeling that like spark again. I just locked in top 128 of ADV Revival. Um, Somehow, barely. I don't think I played well the entirety of the second Swiss round, but I think I'm back to being myself, so that's pretty good. It's like I played a few ladder games the other day. Felt pretty good. I think I went like 4-1, so feel pretty alright. Unless I was using some super dog shit. Some of y'all are in the ADV Discord may have seen that Multrace that I posted. I did play a couple games with that. I never got it to work because look at the set. It's agility physical Moltres with fire blast, HP fighting and stealing. But yeah. So a bit of a new type of content today though. I've never done like a tier list style video. I mean, I guess I did my VR like last year, but I've never done something like this, right? So today what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be going through all of the abilities that are in Gen 3 Pokemon. Every single one. And we're going to be putting them somewhere on this tier list until we reach a conclusion, until we get through all of the abilities. Now, one thing to note is because I'm using paint for this, I can't actually order the rows. So I will we'll go through at the end, and I'll name like the top 3 abilities in every row, just so people know. And I'll make my pick for the best ability too as well once we get through all of them. But I think for now, all that you'll be able to see as I'm making it is I can put every single ability in one of these categories, but I can't order them. I can just put like a piece of text down. I can't actually move it because of the way paint works, unfortunately. So, all right, let's get started. So there are, how many of these are there? A few. I have a list pulled up of the abilities. I don't actually know how many of them exactly there are, but there's a lot. There's definitely over 30. Which doesn't sound like a whole lot until you consider that in later generations there's about 1 million different abilities. Like Gen 3 was the generation that introduced abilities, so they kind of started a little bit small. There are still some really broken abilities though in this generation. Sorry. Got some coffee right here. Just woke up. I didn't just wake up. I'm just kind of tired. But, so let's begin. First ability is Airlock, which is functionally the same as Cloud 9, another ability. Now, interestingly, Airlock is an ability that is only learned by Rayquaza, which is a banned Pokemon. So we're going to have to put it in the banned tier. I'm going to make this just slightly bigger for the sake of that. Yep, so Airlock is a banned ability, but Cloud 9 is not. We will get to that. There is, Cloud 9 is learned by a couple specific Pokemon. Really, I think it's just one, actually. It's learned by one Pokemon, and it gives it a very interesting, weird niche in the ADV metagame that we'll get to when we get there. Next up is Arena Trap. I mean, everybody knows where this is going to go, right? Dugtrio is literally only good because it has Arena Trap. And Trapinch also has it. I've actually used Trapinch in ADV Ubers before. It's a very funny Pokemon there because Banded Quick Attack OHKOs Deoxys Attack. So it's a really consistent way to trap DOA after a kill, which is really funny that Trapinch has that use in particular, because Deoxys Attack is one of the most like unholy nukes Pokemon's ever created, and Trapinch is just like a little fucking guy. But it's pretty awesome. I enjoy that a lot. Next up, we have Battle Armor. Battle Armor is a pretty good ability. Its only effect is that you can't get crit, which is great, right? I'm going to put it in incredibly small niche, though, because, one, Um, I'm going to also add, I think, to incredibly small niche, I'm going to add a piece of text there that says bad distribution, I think, because that's something that needs to be or bad dist. I'm gonna make this a little smaller, but bad distribution is something that is going to come up a lot on this list. Because there's a lot of abilities that are phenomenal abilities, but because only like one Pokemon gets it and it's really dog shit, you never see them in ADV. We'll get to a few of those later. Battle Armor is going to go here. It's a great ability. If it was on something better than Armaldo and Kabutops. Armaldo actually uses it to good effect. I think it was Asta who came up with this set a while ago. The knockoff Harden Rest Seismic Toss Armaldo that always 1v1s Curse Restlax. Like, Curse Restlax literally can never break it. It's a great tool for certain stalls. Because there are a lot of stall type builds that get absolutely rolled by Curse Restlax. Like, it's a very uncommon Pokemon, but if you run into it on ladder, you're like, oh shit. Like, you have to play very precise to beat it. You have to hold your Scarm HP. You have to somehow kill it before last mon, which means probably trading your Doll Boom into it, or you have to find a way to set up your Suicune before it comes out. It's like, if you don't have a Suicune, it's Milo instead. It's like, dude, it can be really, really tough to actually beat for those types of stalls. And Armaldo alleviates that by the use of Battle Armor, which means it can never get crit by Body Slam. Harden, which means it always matches Snorlax attack boosts with defense boosts. And Seismic Toss, which does consistent damage regardless of the defense boosts. And Rest to make it so you can stall out literally all of its PP. Very nice. And also Knockoff to get rid of the lefties if you have Sand is pretty nice. Even if you don't have Sand, it makes it so that Seismic Toss rips through a little bit faster, which is nice. Something else to note, though, is that strategy is, first of all, it's already incredibly uncommon as it is, but second of all, there's been a new discovery that also helps those certain stalls versus Curse Restlax. Just yesterday, I believe, Battle Factory player LRXC, he's a member of the ADV community. He's done a lot on the like in-game side. He's not really all that much of a, I know he plays ADV League, but other than that, he doesn't really play like Showdown ADVOU that much. It's more so just he enjoys like the other, like he enjoys Gen 3 as a whole, just doesn't necessarily play ADVOU. He does a lot of cool stuff like ADV 1v1, other meta games, things like that. You should check him out if you haven't. I'll put a link to his channel in the description. But he made a discovery while doing a Battle Factory run on stream yesterday, which I believe hit the world record, which was cool. So congrats to him. That apparently Pressure versus non-Ghost type Curse takes double PP as if it were Ghost type Curse, which we're not entirely sure if that's exactly what's going on. There's somebody was saying it might be AI Pokemon only that get affected by that, which that'd be a little strange. But if that is the case, and that is indeed found to be a true mechanic, then those teams get much better into Curse Restlax because it only has 8 curses, and if you roar it once, after it sets up like 3 or 4 curses, all of a sudden it can only set up one more time, and then if you roar it again, the game's just over. Because it can't set up and then Suicune just sits on it forever, or rests on it forever, etc. It's things like that basically. But yeah, so that's Battle Armor. Blaze, very good fire ability that is only learned by the fire type starters. Blaze is going to be, we're going to put Blaze in pretty good as well as all of the other 1/3 HP stat boosting abilities. They're all pretty common. I'm going to put them all here now. Torrent, Overgrow, and Swarm. They're all going to be here. All 4 of them are things you will very commonly see on ADV teams. Swarm Hera is one of the biggest terrors of the format if it hits all its moves. Blaze Pokemon like Charmander, or sorry, Charizard. Fucking, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. Blaziken, Charizard. Those two are the two Blazers you have to look out for. Mostly Charizard. Charizard in Blaze range is an absolute fucking destroyer of worlds. And then Torrent, you're mostly gonna have to deal with that on Swampert, but Torrent Pump is really, even from Deathpert, is really strong. And Torrent Surf, I've seen a cool spread before that sets it up so you take HP Grass from Mixtar and then always kill back with Torrent Surf, which is pretty cool. I've seen that's like a lead kind of gambit if you don't want to switch into Mixtar. I've seen that set before. It's actually really cool, I think. But yeah, Torrent is a really interesting ability, and then Overgrow is kind of the worst of the four, but it's still pretty good. Mostly because the users of it are not good. Outside of Venusaur. Venusaur is pretty good, but it kind of has the ability where you can't, like, you have to hit your moves is kind of the awkward thing. But if you hit your moves, Venu getting dropped into Overgrow is actually quite strong. Same with Sceptile. If you're an Overgrow Leaf Blade is a killing machine with you can get crits on everything. It's very strong actually. Just don't look at its other moves or its special attack stat. It literally has like everything it would need to be a top tier Pokemon in ADV except for a special attack stat. It's very funny. And so that means it just does no damage to anything unless it's an Overgrow, and then it dies to sand. It's super awesome. But yeah, I think all of these are pretty solid abilities to have, all things considered. I think that should say a lot about the quality of abilities in this tier. There aren't really a lot of super great ones, I don't think. Most of them are because of a lot of abilities that become really good later on are either a nerfed version in this gen, or they're just like not there, or they have terrible distribution, which there are a couple later. We'll get to that. Next up is Chlorophyll. It's pretty good, but it's really uncommon. I'm gonna put it here. Actually, I'm gonna put it down here because the Pokemon that get it are like the only real Chlorophyll user in the tier is Executor. Like, that's the only one you'll see on a semi-frequent basis, and even then, it's really not that frequent. Yeah, that's like literally it. Shiftry is awful. Sunflora is even worse. Victreebel might have some use, potentially. I haven't really ever experimented with it, but I know Watermess used the team with Victreebel recently, but I don't think it was not a Chlorophyll victory. It was abusing the fact that it has a decent typing at lead, I think, and learns Encore, so you can Encore lock meta into Mag, and you can put stuff to sleep at lead. It's interesting for sure, but like it's not Chlorophyll, which is why I'm saying the niche for it is basically Executor on Sun, which is pretty small. Next up is Clear Body. Clear Body's a great ability. I'm gonna put it right up here. And the only reason why it isn't in top tier is because the only Pokemon that get it are Metagross and the 3 Regis that matter. Tentacruel also gets it, but that's fucking Tentacruel. Metagross and the 3 Regis are... Metagross, of course, is like a top 3 Pokemon in the tier. Clear Body's great on it. It's the main reason why Clear Body is so high. The Regis also not getting intimidated is something to note. But Metagross not getting intimidated is something that is really, really makes it scary. Because if it gets a Mash Raise, you cannot get rid of it. Unless it switches out. But the only reason why it isn't in top tier is because Metagross, like, Clear Body is just kind of like an added reason why Metagross is so good. It's not the main reason. Whereas, like, Arena Trap carries an entire Pokemon. Is kind of my logic towards that. But Clear Body is definitely a super great ability. Making Metagross immune to Intimidate, and the Regis, which boom on you immune to Intimidate, is huge. Next up, we get to Cloud9 now. Cloud9, I'm going to put it in the same tier as Battle Armor. Cloud9 is a very... Actually, I might move Overgrow down a tier on second thought, but Cloud9 is a really great, really interesting ability. The main niche for it, it turns off the weather conditions like airlock. The main niche for it, the only Pokemon that gets in this generation is Golduck. And if any of you have ever used Scizor before, you know what it does. You know it's like a late game. You've chipped all their Pokemon. It's sand immune. You set up with agility, get a Pinch Berry, or set up with Swords Dance and get your Salac Berry, etc. And then you try to win from there with Reversal or something like that. Golduck is like that, but on the special side because of Cloud9. Cloud9 makes it so it's a non-Rock Ground Steel type immune to sand because the ability just shuts it off. So you can go down to a Pinch Berry with Golduck. And it's a little weak because it's not that like its special attack's only like 95, I think, but it's still a very legit cleaner. And it's something that like it's kind of just worse Kingdra because it also requires a turn of setup and Calm Mind, and then maybe 2 if you want to Endure down to your Salac. But it's if you get a Calm Mind up, or maybe even if you can find 2, which you probably won't be able to, it can get decently strong if you remove the Blissey. It can, if you've chipped like a couple of the special checks, like the Zapdos or the Raikou, etc., like the electric type, and you can actually like one-hit KO everything. It's not bad. Like you can set up scenarios for it for sure. But I'm saying it's obviously like it's kind of in the same vein as Battle Armor, or like where it's like in super duper small niche that you're almost never gonna see. Okay. Next up is Color Change, which is another ability that belongs in this tier. Color Change is only on Kecleon, and that should tell you all you need to know. Kecleon is a terrible Pokemon. So yeah, that's about it. But it is a good ability. It changes its type equal to the last move that hit it, which is something that can be pretty annoying to deal with, but it's still like whatever. You can set it up very easily. I think it's a fine ability, and it has its uses, but I don't think it's maybe I should move it down a tier even. I'm gonna put it down a tier just because it's on Kecleon, if I'm being honest. Color Change doesn't belong in the same tier as like Truant and Illuminate. Just put it here. I don't know. I think it's fine there, but it's like the worst ability in that tier. Okay, Q-Charm. This is kind of just like an ability that exists. It's very niche because none of the things that learn it are usable in OU. It's literally just the Delcatty line, the Clefable line, and the Wigglytuff line. Those are all the only things that can learn it. So we're gonna put it right here, right here in the incredibly small niche or bad distribution. Here's an example of an ability that would be better if it had better distribution. Compound Eyes. It's a great ability. Raises accuracy of moves. For example, like raising accuracy on Sleep Powder is great, right? And Butterfree has. There was a video that Jim Cool made recently featuring like a Butterfree that had Compound Eyes Sleep Powder. And it's really the only notable thing that gets it, but it's Butterfree. It's really not that notable. So I'm gonna put it in this tier again because it's incredibly niche. But it's not like it's a bad ability. It's only really super niche because the only thing that learns it is Butterfree. Like I don't really know what else to say. Damp. This is another ability that's like interesting. It gets used sometimes on things like Politoed, and the reason for it is because you can stop Metagross. It's kind of a gimmick. You can stop Metagross from booming. I don't really think it's all that great. Stopping boom is cool in a tier like ADV. It's not like outright terrible. But it's like, I don't really know. I think also on second thought, we're going to... Oh, that's not what we wanted. I'm going to put Chlorophyll a tier up. I don't think Chlorophyll belongs down here. I'm going to put Chlorophyll a tier up, and I'm going to put Damp in its place, I think. Because Chlorophyll's at least, like, I don't know. You don't really care if you have it. I don't know, actually. I think they all kind of belong down here, if I had to say. Maybe I'll just make chlorophyll smaller, because it's kind of taking up a lot of space right now. Can I just make it smaller? Like this and just say... Yeah, that'll work. Okay, cool. Yeah, but I think those both belong there. Its dampness doesn't really have that great of a niche. It's like... I don't know. It's just kind of there. The next two abilities are both banned. Drizzle and Drought. Only on Uber's Pokemon. Drizzle and Drought are only on Groudon and Kyogre in this gen. And if they were in... If we had like Drought Ninetales or Drought Torkoal, they'd be fucking broken in OU. So, there you go. Early Bird. This is an ability. I'm going to put it in neutral. Am I, though? Well, all the Pokemon that learn it are dog shit. Outside of, like, Houndoom, and Houndoom is still terrible. Yeah, I don't know. I think Houndoom's other ability, Flash Fire, is something that would go in neutral, but we're going to say... My reasoning for Early Bird, I think I'm just going to put Early Bird here. It's, like, fine. But there's nothing really that gets it that's relevant outside of Houndoom, and Houndoom is really not relevant. Like, ladder players love it, but I don't get it, personally. Next up, we have Effect Spore. Effect Spore is going to go here, because Breloom is pretty relevant. And Effect Spore is a funny little ability that when you hit it, it has a static slash flame body effect where you have a 30% chance to come away status versus Effect Spore. It is Para, Poison, or Sleep are the three that can happen. Effect Spore Sleep, Effect Spore is so funny. One time, I don't know if y'all have ever had this happen to you using Breloom in this tier, but there was one time where my opponent hit me with a move, they lived, they got Effect Spore parried, and then my Spore didn't go off, which meant that I couldn't put them to sleep anymore, and I ended up losing because of it. It was very funny. Effect Spore is a funny little ability, but Breloom doesn't have a different one, so you can't switch it at all. That said, it's still, like, you don't really care if you have it most of the time. I don't really think it's all that good, but I'm going to put it up here anyway for the sake of having something in this tier for now. I might move it later. Flame Body would be awesome if there were more than 2 Pokemon that learned it, and they weren't Magmar and Magcargo. Flame Body is unfortunately pretty mid for that purpose. I'm going to make it smaller so that I can fit more abilities in this tier, because I have a feeling we're going to be putting a lot of abilities in this tier. Okay. Next up, we have Flash Fire. This one actually belongs in this tier. Flash Fire is on a couple Pokemon. Like Houndoom, that's most of the reason that makes it relevant is the Flash Fire ability. Makes it so that it sits on Super Celebi, Super Jirachi, and can trap Gengar. It's a very interesting defensive niche for a Pokemon that doesn't have great defensive stats, basically. The other Pokemon that gets it is Arcanine, but you're going to be using Intimidate on Arcanine pretty much all the time anyway, so... Houndoom is the main one for that. But Flash Fire is what makes it decent, so we'll put it there. First ability in Terrible, Forecast. Who the fuck is using Cast Form? It's not like it's that bad, but like, come on, it's a fucking Cast Form. Guts is a great ability. Guts goes up here and pretty good. Guts Hariyama, Guts Heracross, Guts Machamp. Those are all phenomenal Pokemon. There's a couple other Guts users that are worth mentioning too. Those being Ursaring is one that's worth mentioning, and that's actually the only one looking at it. But Ursaring is a strong motherfucker. I once used him to 6-0 Zakaru in 12 turns in tournament. That was pretty funny. He's incredible. I love him. But the best Guts user in the tier is Heracross, followed closely by Hariyama, and then Machamp is also there. Machamp's going to be using Guts most of the time, so it's like not bad. It gives you a Gar-Wisp switch in on physical offense. It's pretty cool. It's a great ability though. Okay. Huge Power is an insane ability. Absolutely nasty ability. It doubles the attack stat of a Pokemon. This is the only generation where Huge Power is worse than its functionally identical counterpart in Pure Power, and the whole reason for that is that the only Pokemon that get Pure Power is Medicham, and the only Pokemon that gets Huge Power is Azumarill. And out of those two, the viable one is Medicham. So I'm going to put Pure Power up here while I'm thinking about it. But Pure Power is Huge Power if it was good in this generation, basically. Because it's on a Pokemon that can actually use it. Hustle is like not. I don't know. It's on like Delibird and like Togetic and Corsola. The only niche Hustle has is one time I CB boomed a max HP, max defense Jirachi and it killed with Corsola, which was pretty funny. That's the only time I've ever seen it have a use. Hyper Cutter also belongs right here. It's like, this is kind of like the bottom tier for abilities. Maybe I should move up a couple of these, like Chlorophyll. Yeah, I'm going to move up Chlorophyll and Damp and Cloud9. And Battle Armor, I think. Yeah. Okay, we'll do all that. Yeah, I think that's more consistent. Cloud9. And then we'll use our brush to get through this. Fucking hell, man. There we go. Alright. I need a thicker brush. There we go. Okay. Yeah, no, that doesn't. What I was doing didn't really make any sense. This tier, Damp, and Chlorophyll. I think that's all four that I moved up. Yeah. Okay. So, rest of the abilities in this tier don't really do anything, actually. So I think this makes sense because this is like. This tier actually turned into don't do anything, like abilities that don't do anything but are pretty good, or are like either don't do anything because they have bad distribution or don't do anything because they're just like kind of neutral abilities. And the terrible abilities are just like, why would you ever use them? Speaking of terrible abilities, as in why would you ever use them? We're going to Illuminate. Literally does nothing in battle. Literally does nothing in battle. That's all. Next ability is Immunity. It's a pretty good ability, all things considered. It makes it so you can't be poisoned. Immunity is very nice. It's really only used on Snorlax. If it was on more Pokemon, it'd be a little higher, but Immunity Lax, it's a very underrated pivot into Pokemon. Like, you can pivot your Immunity Lax into like Toxic Refpert and it like owns it. It's very awesome. Yeah, it's better. It's really good in specific scenarios, but it's nice to have an extra toxic immunity. Inner Focus, it's like, I don't know, it's like okay. I personally like, it's not on anything that's really that good. The best Pokemon it's on is like Alakazam, and it's really not flinching is not something that's really that relevant. Insomnia is another ability with a really small niche, and it's on a couple Pokemon. Well, really only one Pokemon that sees a little bit of play, but I'll put it up here because it actually has a use in the game on occasion. Insomnia on Banette is useful because it makes it into a super hard Breloom counter if they don't have HP Ghost. You can't put Banette to sleep And it's a ghost type, so it's immune to fighting moves. And Breloom doesn't get any good physical moves outside of like Hidden Power Ghost to hit Banette. So that's pretty awesome. For that specific role, it's pretty awesome. Banette is an interesting Pokemon in this tier because it has the compression of Spin Block plus Wisp plus Sleep Immune, which is interesting for sure. It doesn't really have defensive stats to speak of, so it kind of gets owned if your opponent has a Pursuit Tyranitar, but it's an interesting Pokemon for sure. Intimidate. We have our second ability in the super top tier. Intimidate is on so many meta-relevant Pokemon. It's on, of course, Gyarados and Salamence, but it's also on Arcanine and the rare Tauros that you'll see. But the main two are Salamence and Gyarados, which are not only two of the best physical breakers / cleaners in the tier, they are also two pretty good defensively viable Pokemon because of their ability. Salamence especially. Intimidate is part of what makes it such a good pivot. Like, Salamence plus a Steel type is a really nice, solid defensive core. Because you can use Mence to pivot into like ground moves and fire moves that threaten Steel types, and you can use a Steel type to pivot into the like Rock type and Ice type moves that threaten Salamence. It's pretty cool. Like Metamence is like on it's a great offensive core. Metamence and like Rachi-Mence are two really good offensive cores, and you can even see them on more defensive teams with things such as like Toxic Asterachi with like just like DD-Mence or Wish-Mence, or like Slamrachi with Wish-Mence. It's pretty cool. But yeah, so Intimidate is in the top tier for that reason. It's a really important tool for offense to limit offense and defense to limit certain physical attackers. It's a lot of teams use Intimidate as part of their DD-Tar or Aerodactyl game plan, and this is also a part of the reason why meta is so good, is because it can't be intimidated. Keen Eye. Notably, Keen Eye is on Skarmory, but doesn't mean it does anything. The only time it ever has a use is versus like Sand Attack Pass, and they have a mag on those teams anyway. Sand Attack Pass should be banned, by the way. It's fucking stupid. Okay, next ability in the super top tier, Levitate. So you might wonder, what is the reason why certain Pokemon in this tier have such good defensive profiles? Pokemon like Claydol, like Gengar, like Misdreavus even, and Weezing, and Flygon. And the common thread between all of those is ground immunity through Levitate. Claydol is a ground psychic type immune to ground. So it's with the exception of Hidden Power Bug, it's a really awesome rock type check that can also spin and explode and earthquake the rock types and psychic the Gengar. It's pretty nice. And then of course you have Flygon, who ground dragon typing with Levitate means it is the hardest DD-Tar check known to man outside of Double Edge or the rare Ice Beam. Pretty cool defensive profile. Spike immune, of course, another great trait of Levitators. Gengar is, of course, probably the best Levitator in the tier. Actually, definitely the best Levitator in the tier. Only competing with really Claydol, but not even really that close. Of course, Gengar, you might think of Gengar as an offensive Pokemon if you've only played later gens. Gengar is a great defensive Pokemon in this tier because it has 3 incredibly strong immunities in Fighting, Normal, and Ground. And it also has resistances to a couple common offensive types, like it resists Megahorn is a big one. But it's mostly just those 3 immunities and the fact that you can pump special defense to live things like T-Tar Crunch and T-Tar Pursuit that make it so strong. Ghost typing and its speed tier and its special coverage and Will-O-Wisp and Levitate are all what combines to make Gengar such a broken Pokemon. It threatens so many teams in such a unique and interesting way. It makes it probably my favorite Pokemon to use in the tier, or one of them. And Levitate's a huge reason why. Lightning Rod. This ability, notably, so the only Pokemon that can really use this ability are ground types. It's not good in singles at all because it doesn't do anything in single battles, right? But in doubles, we'll talk about this in doubles for a second. The only Pokemon that can really use this ability in doubles are the ground types that learn it, Marowak and Rhydon. And the reason for that is because in Gen 3, Lightning Rod does not give you an immunity. it just makes it so you draw the move to yourself. So Manectric will still get hit. However, in doubles, in singles, it does nothing. So we're putting Lightning Rod, because for the purposes of ADVOU, Lightning Rod is a terrible ability. Limber. This Pokemon cannot become paralyzed. It would be a really cool ability if it was on things that were better than Hitmonlee, Ditto, and Persian. So Limber is like it's a good ability with bad distribution. I'm putting it here for that reason. Liquid Ooze. It's kind of an incredibly niche ability as it stands. It's gonna go here because it actually has a use. But it's like really not anything super special. It's the only Pokemon that can actually use it is Tentacruel in this tier, and Tentacruel is already pretty bad no use, so there you go. Okay, Magma Armor. This ability would be decent if it had better distribution, but it still wouldn't be anything super special. That said, Magma Armor forms part of Camerup's niche in being a pretty strong Jirachi check, in that it can't get frozen by Ice Punch and it earthquakes the shit out of it. So there you go. Still dies to 2 Psychics though, so from +1 Rachi, which is pretty funny. But it's one of the best sub-CM Rachi checks like in the game for that reason. It's immune to T-Bolt and doesn't get frozen by Ice Punch. Magnet Pole, phenomenal ability. I'm gonna put it in. Only one notable Pokemon in Magneton learns it, but it's kind of, if I'm putting Arena Trap up here. Magnet Pole is definitely a tier below though, is the thing, because Magnet Pole is a little more niche than Arena Trap. Magnet Pole is a great ability. Makes it so you trap the shit out of Skarmory. Makes it so if you have an ability like Trace, you can reverse trap. But Magnet Pole is a super great ability. It enables entire team styles by setting up traps on Skarmory. Magneton can also be used in a very interesting role to set up traps to T-Wave a Jirachi or set up traps to pick off a 50% Metagross. It's a very underrated part of Magneton. Like, Magnet Pole is all steel types, not just Skarmory. A lot of people forget that. But yeah, it's super cool. Makes Magneton relevant, basically. It's very, very awesome. Marvel Scale. Only on Milotic. I'm going to put it in neutral because it's something that you have to keep track of when you're fighting Milotic, because you don't want it to take a para or anything like that. It's kind of in the same kind of thing as like Flash Fire, where it's like you don't really want to, like, Milotic can just refresh it off anyway, but Marvel Scale Milo is pretty tough to kill, all things considered. It's not going to be up at, maybe it should be up a tier. We're going to leave it there because it's just Milo, and Milo's already not the most common Pokemon as it is. It's still good for sure, but it's not the most common Pokemon. Minus and plus both literally do nothing in singles, so we're putting them down here. Plus and minus are abilities that only do things in doubles. They boost special attack to the other side in doubles if you have plus and minus. Both sides get a special attack boost, I believe. Yeah, it is. Okay. Next ability that's going to go in super top tier. Natural Cure. One of the most common abilities in ADV among relevant Pokemon. Blissey, Celebi, and Starmie. And even the less common Roselia all have it. They're both great. Three of those are phenomenal Pokemon in the metagame. One of them is Roselia. But Roselia is actually... They had a bit of a... There are people that had a Roselia phase recently because it's a spiker that actually beats Zapdos. Or doesn't beat it, but can swap to Zapdos, which is not something any of the other ones can do. Because the other three are Skarmory, Forretress, and Cloyster. That said, Natural Cure is really versatile. Walls like Blissey being immune to Toxic and Para and Sleep are huge. Natural Cure swap is like... Natural Cure swapping is like a way you can win a game. Like, it's a win con versus a Milo, for example. Like, if I have a Blissey and a Recover Starmie, like, versus a Milo, that's a guaranteed win. So I just keep swapping back and forth and recovering as needed. It's incredible. It's such a broken defensive ability that is part of the reason why defense in ADV is so good, is because status pressure is not something you can really do to those types of defensive teams because their best walls are all going to be have natural cure. Oblivious literally does nothing in this tier. It hasn't been buffed yet. It only blocks Attract in this gen. Oblivious in later gens has the ability to stop Intimidate, and it has the ability to make yourself immune to Taunt, both of which are phenomenal qualities. But so it gets a lot better in later gens. But Oblivious in Gen 3, terrible. Can't. Overgrow we already discussed. It's up here with the other 3 abilities. Own Tempo can't be confused. It's gonna go here because it's not super great. It's not really relevant. There aren't many moves in ADV that are confusing you. It'd be like self-confusion is the one thing, and none of these Pokemon can abuse self-confusion really. So I don't really know. Pickup literally does nothing in battle. It's a phenomenal ability in game. If some of y'all have seen another video of mine in which I spend an hour looking for pickup leftovers, but it's a great ability in game. Gets you a bunch of free items. It's awesome. Poison Point is a really cool ability in the same vein as like Flame Body, Static, etc. Effect Spore. But the problem remains that Poison Point's most commonly used Pokemon are Nidoqueen and Nidoking and Roselia. So like, it's not that great. And Roselia's gonna use Natural Cure anyway. So like, it's really not that great. Next ability in the super duper duper top tier. Pressure. Pressure has a very simple and not that strong sounding effect at first. In that, if you use PP to at a Pokemon, right? Like if you attack them, if you try to status them, even recently we learned if you set spikes on the side of the field when pressure comes out, it takes 2 PP instead of 1, which doesn't sound like all that strong of an effect until you play the tier and you realize, oh shit, some of these stall builds have like Zapdos Suicune, right? Or like Zapdos Suicune Dusclops, or like Suicune Raikou, or Zapmolt on like Superman, right? And you kind of realize like, oh shit, throughout the course of the long game that they're trying to force, like it takes a lot of PP, right? Like you have versus pressure, you have actually very limited PP to work with. It's something that is really, pressure is not something that really ever has this type of an effect on a metagame outside of ADV. It's so good in this tier though. And it's part of the reason why like defense is so strong. Pressure and Natural Cure are 2 incredible defensive abilities. And it's part of the reason why defense is so good. Pure Power we already discussed. Rain Dish, only learned by Ludicolo, and you're never going to use it anyway. So we're going to put it here. Actually, we're just going to put it down here. Rain Dish isn't a bad ability by any means. There's a Pokemon later down the line in Gen 5, Tentacruel, that gets it and makes great use out of it on rain teams. But in this gen, Rain Dish does nothing. Rockhead, pretty great ability. Rockhead is part of the reason why Arrow is so good. Because it can use Double Edge, which is a very strong neutral hit move, without taking any damage from recoil. Rockhead is also used by Marowak for the same reason, basically. But yeah, Rockhead is really excellent at for Arrow in particular, because it gives it a very strong neutral hit move versus most of the metagame. If your opponent has no normal resist left, just lock Double Edge you in. It's very simple. It's the same principle as like your opponent has no rock resist left, you just lock Rock Slide you in, or no ground immune left, you just lock Earthquake you in. You know, it's one of the things that makes Arrow so incredibly threatening, is you have to deal with that. This next one makes me sad. Rough Skin is the next ability on the list. Rough Skin is a phenomenal ability. A lot of you who play more current gens know this, because Garchomp has it. However, in this gen, the only Pokemon that gets Rough Skin is Sharpedo. Sharpedo is, I shouldn't have to tell you this, it's dog shit. It's so bad. Like, it has no use, and it's not going to be taking physical hits anyway. So Rough Skin doesn't even do fucking anything. But it's still a great ability, which is why it's up here. If it was on a Pokemon that was more meta relevant, it would be super relevant in ADV. So we're putting it up here. Next ability is Runaway. Shouldn't have to say anything about that. It's the same as Pickup, and then it does jack shit in game, or jack shit on Showdown. Next ability after that is going to be one of the abilities that goes in our super duper top tier, Sandstream. Those of you who have played ADV know, one of the central factors, the most central factors in ADV, the most central, like, things that push damage, the three things that people talk about in terms of ADV, the three pillars are Toxic, Spikes, and Sandstorm. That creates the most common archetype TSS. And of course, there's only one way to set Sand in ADV, set Permasand anyway, which is Tyranitar. And there's a reason why people consider Tyranitar the best Pokemon in the tier, is not only does it have this insane, like, set versatility. In Pursuit, you know, Pursuit Tar is so good, BKC Tar is so good, DD Tar, little inconsistent these days, but still great. Mix Tar is another great mix-up at lead that can really rip apart some TSS builds. But the main reason why a lot of people are like, okay, Tyranitar is the best Pokemon in the tier is because Sandstorm is such an omnipresent thing. Sandstorm is something you have to account for on every single Pokemon. That's why Lefties is the most common item, because you either gain HP in Sand, or you don't gain HP, or you, like, don't lose HP in Sand. If you ever wondered why more Pokemon don't use Pinch Berries, this is the reason. Sandstorm, if they go down to their Pinch Berries, Sandstorm will just kill them. That chip damage from Sandstorm is so huge. And it's part of the reason. And Sandstorm plus Spikes is how more offensive teams, or just Sandstorm, like Sandstorm and Spikes are the methods by which more offensive teams can hold down stall, right? Sandstorm is a huge reason why, if you've ever played an offense game, an offense versus stall game, and you don't have Tyranitar versus, like, Blissey Milo, you understand what I mean. Like, it's actual agony to deal with those teams if you don't have Sand. And Sand is... Sandless ADV sounds like one of the worst metagames ever. ADV with Sand is really fun, I think. So, Sand is a super, like, super important, like, metagame defining factor. And if there's only one Pokemon that gets it, it's gonna be on, like, a lot of teams, is the thing. So, Tyranitar, it helps that it's just good on top of it. But if it didn't have Sand, it would not be nearly. It'd be more like GSC Tar, where it's good but not, like, super top tier. It'd be more like GSC Tar, but because it sets Sand, it is so easily ascends to the best Pokemon on the tier for that reason, in my opinion. There are people who think. I've seen takes of Skarmory, Blissey, and even Skarmory, like even Blissey and Metagross. Skarmory number oneers are more common than the other two. Metagross, I think, is only C that I've seen, and Blissey, I saw ABR. ABR posted a Blissey 1 take, which was something. I see where he's coming from, but, like, come on. Sand is just so, like, potent in this tier. I can't say enough about it. Next ability is Sandveil, which has long since been banned. Not long since, really, actually. It's only been a couple years, but it was banned because people disliked the variants it brought, because people would use Gligar and they'd use Cacturne, which are two Pokemon that are just not good, and they'd use Sandveil to kind of get around all of that. Next ability is Serene Grace, which is I'm going to put it in super top tier because it really... Okay, there are two Pokemon that are meta relevant that can use Serene Grace. One of them is Jirachi. It's its only ability, and we'll talk about Jirachi more in a second, but the other one is Blissey. If you're using Serene Grace Blissey, you need to be put on a list because Natural Cure is, like, so much better. But Serene Grace Blissey is, like,
It's there. It exists, sadly. Jirachi is...
It's one of the most infuriating Pokemon to build, like, preparing for.
Because I feel like there are so many times where I'm trying to build a team, and my best way of checking Jirachi is, like, BKC Tar, and it's like, okay, this is cool and all, but one Fire Punch burn and I just lost. You know what I mean? Like, one Fire Punch burn, it's just over. Like, that doesn't sound ideal to me, really, right? That said, like, it's weird because I saw Cowboy Dan posted about this a while ago. He said it's like it's kind of like weird because you kind of have to prep assuming that like the Fire Punch burn is gonna happen or the Ice Punch freeze is gonna happen. But at the same time, it's like if you lean too hard into it and you prep for that, you're gonna make your team worse into other stuff. So it's very weird. It's a Pokemon that's kind of frustrating to prep for, but in game it really is like it's really not that bad. But the games where you do get Fire Punch burned on swap immediately are like, dude, it's fucking agony. That said, this is why you have multiple EQ users, and you can even let your perk get toxic if you want. To not let it get burned so that you can EQ the Rachi down if it's like a strong physical perk. That said, Serene Grace is such like,
it's kind of like Schrodinger's ability to me, because it like you don't notice it until you do, basically, in game. But yeah, I think the really underrated annoying thing is T-Ball Paras from Serene Grace, but yeah, so that's Jirachi and Serene Grace. Psychic Spit drops too, another annoying thing, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's hard to prep for, but you kind of have to not lean too much into it because it's at the end of the day, it's just RNG, really. Next up, we have Shadow Tag, which is only on an Uber's Pokemon, so it's banned. Only on Wynot and Wobbuffet, both of which are not legal in Wobbuffet. I don't fucking know. Both of which are not legal in OU. Shed Skin. It's a good ability. Like, healing yourself from status at the end of turn is awesome. But that said, it's not on any Pokemon that are good. So I'm going to put it here. Yeah. Shed Skin belongs there. Yep. Okay. Next up, Shell Armor. Same spot as Battle Armor, but slightly worse because it doesn't have that one specific H. I'm gonna put it here though. It's on Cloyster is the big Pokemon that it's on. And not getting crit makes it decently, like, it makes it more consistent, which is nice. Cloyster as a whole is a pretty inconsistent Pokemon already though. So next up is Soundproof. Soundproof is of course one of the banned abilities because of people would use it. They would baton pass into their soundproof Pokemon, and then their soundproof Pokemon couldn't get roared, and then it would just be like, what's the point? Speed Boost is a great ability, but it's used for really degenerate things. I'm gonna put it in pretty good because it's like the one thing holding those teams together. But Speed Boost is like, I don't know really how to rank it, but it's a great ability. In a vacuum, Speed Boost is a phenomenal ability. It's just that the only things that are like normal with it don't happen until like Gen 6. So the like, it's a broken ass ability. It's only on Ninjask in this gen, and of course, like, if you've played ADV, you know about Ninjask. It's just like, I don't really still get why it's in the tier, but it's there anyway. I'm not putting it in super top tier because I guess I'm mad. I don't know. Static is a pretty good ability, but it suffers the same fate as Flame Body and Poison Point in that there is just no good distribution for it. Static becomes a supreme top tier ability in later gens when it gets put on Zapdos, but for now it is not nothing special. Stench Does nothing in battle. That's a fun fact. Sticky Hold. This is an ability that would be interesting because it would be interesting, except for it doesn't, like, if it were on if knockoff were more relevant, there's a world in which it's decent, right? And it's like not a bad ability. Like, not losing your item from knockoff is great. It's just knockoff is kind of niche as it is in ADV, and the Pokemon that get it are even more niche. So we're putting it in Sticky Hold, but I could see it having a use in an alternate universe. Sturdy. It's a great ability in later gens. Absolutely phenomenal ability in later gens, but you'll never guess in this gen. Pre-Gen 5, Sturdy is dog shit. It only affects Oko moves pre-Gen 5. So Gen 3 and 4 does not do anything to, like, doesn't do anything. And the Pokemon that get it, like, these are Pokemon that can use it later, like Donphan, Forretress, Skarmory. Those are all Pokemon that get great use out of Sturdy in later gens, but in ADV, Sturdy is just not that. Suction Cups. This is another ability that you have to, really it's only on, like, Cradily out of relevant Pokemon. Cradily has, I mean, if you've watched Jim Cool's YouTube, you know that there are certain people who are fans of Cradily in this tier. I don't understand why. I think it's really bad, but I guess it exists. It's not a bad ability by all things considered. Like, a setup sweeper immune to Roar is, like, huge. But that said, it's a Cradily, so come on. Swarm we already talked about. Swift Swim is going to go up here. The reason being is that there are a couple, it's like Chlorophyll, except for there are actually meta-relevant Pokemon that use the ability. Those being, of course, Kingdra and Ludicolo. Primarily Kingdra. Kingdra is a great Pokemon in ADV. It's a little inconsistent, but if you can manage to get the Bliss, Kingdra just, and the other thing too is Kingdra just cleans offense teams so crazy. So I could see it even being used without Doug, maybe. I'd have to think about it. There was a team a while ago I saw on Ladder that was interesting. That was like CB Hera, Mag, Kingdra to clear the weather, and then like Coonlax, I think it was, which was interesting. That type of idea is interesting to me because Kingdra is also like a super offense beater. So you have like your guys that are maybe like, okay, this might fold to like physical offense, but Kingdra like shreds that style. It's super. Kingdra shreds every offensive style, really. It's a type of, it's kind of like an offensive Starmie kind of thing where it's like, yeah, like in those matchups, it's just the best thing that you could possibly have, as long as it's a tighter pump, which we won't talk about. Synchronize next up. It's really not, the only thing that it really does, it's really not that great. It's going here just because it's mid mostly. But Synchronize, the one niche that it does have is if you're using an Umbreon, which already if you're using an Umbreon, you have to understand something is probably wrong. But the one niche that Synchronize does have that is pretty cool is it means that if Gengar wisps you on the switch in, as it would do to a Suitar, for example, to beat it next time, like you can just beat it with T-Bolt and Spikes. If it wisps you on a switch in to Umbreon, Gengar also gets burned, which is pretty cool. That's about the one use it has. That's literally it. So it's like there, it does exist, which is why I'm putting it not in terrible tier, but it's there. Thick Fat, another pretty good ability. It's just kind of overshadowed. Thick Fat Yama is not bad. Thick Fat Lax is like okay, but they both have better abilities. That said, those two, thick fart. That said, those two sets both do definitely exist. So we're putting it here for that reason, basically. Torrent we already discussed. Trace belongs up here. Can I be honest? It belongs up here. Trace is really good. It's kind of in the same kind of vein as like Arena Trap, where Trace carries like an entire Pokemon. In Porygon 2, Gardevoir also gets some use out of it. It's way more niche though. P2 enables like entire styles though, where you reverse trap a Dugtrio and then, or you can reverse trap a Magneton, or you can reverse trap all sorts of cool things, or you can trace Natural Cure. It's such a versatile and cool ability. But that said, it's only as good as P2 is, and P2 is really not all that. So it's gonna be in pretty good for that reason. If P2 is any better, it would be probably in top tier, I think, because it's such a cool, versatile ability. But we're gonna put it in pretty good for now because it doesn't quite. It enables a specific team style, but it's really not anything past that. If you've played Pokemon, you know how bad Truant is. For those who don't know, Slacking does this funny thing where it has the base stat total of a legendary with 160 base attack and great bulk, but it can only attack once every other turn. So there you go. Next ability is Vital Spirit, which is really just worse Insomnia because it's on no Meta Relevant Pokemon instead of one very niche Pokemon. The only Pokemon that get Vital Spirit in this gen are Primeape, Delibird, and Vigoroth, none of which are any good at all. Volt Absorb is going to go up in this tier. It's kind of a trap in that it doesn't really do what's advertised. Because in theory, Volt Absorb makes Jolteon a very solid Zapdos check. But the problem is, if you take Hidden Power with spikes down too many times, you just die. And also, if you take a T-Wave or a Toxic, it's just like over from Zapdos, especially T-Wave. T-Wave means you can now get trapped by Doug, which is just terrible. Lantern, its whole niche is that it has Volt Absorb, so it can sit on offensive Starmie for offensive teams. But that said, Lantern is also really not that good. I don't think either of the Volt Absorb users are anything special. Jolteon is, of course, better, but Jolteon was way better like 3 years ago than it is now. Yeah, I don't think it's anything super great. Water Absorb. Gonna go here as well. Water Absorb is a much better version of Volt Absorb. That said, they're both kind of equivalent abilities in theory, but Water Absorb means that there are a few Pokemon in this tier that can just sit on Suicune. Something like Mantine can Water Absorb in Haze, meaning it's like a hard Suicune wall, which makes some stalls, which are very Coon weak, like you just have that one Pokemon that can come in and own it. Like it also sits on Milo for that reason, especially if you have like Rest or Refresh. It's pretty cool, but it does mean you have to consider that means that games are going to take 20 million turns. Is the other issue. Water Absorb is really, it's better than Volt Absorb, but the things that it enables are things that don't really make progress. It's things that stop your opponent from making progress, if that makes any sense. But it's like, so it's not really super duper great in my opinion, but it's like, it's there, I think. White Smoke is the next ability. White Smoke is like Clear Body, except for it is only on Torkoal, so why you're never gonna see it. It's a good ability though, so I'm gonna put it there because if it was on something else, it'd be pretty good. Water Veil is another ability. Water Veil is a great ability in theory. It prevents burns, but it's only on Wailord, of relevant Pokemon. So Wailord and Seaking are the two, and neither of those. Wailord sees some play, because it's really, it sees play as like a special offense lead. I've used it before for that, and it's actually not all that bad at that, shockingly. I'm kind of surprised that it's not all that bad at that, but yeah. Last ability is Wonder Guard. I'm putting it this high. Of course, Wonder Guard is like the best ability in the game in theory. But you have to consider the context in that it only goes on Shedinja. There's only one person that's ever used Shedinja in a tournament game. Ever. Maybe there's more, but Shedinja in this case was used by Super Epic Ampharos in Losers Finals, I believe, of Kalos Invitational. The reason for it was not in the typical way you think of Shedinja, where it's like, okay, you want it to switch into, like, you want it to own specific teams because it's just immune to all their attacks, right? You think that that's like a typical Shedinja kind of game, right? But that's not what the Shedinja was on that team for. The Shedinja was actually on that team to just die to sand and set up a Dug Trap, which was pretty cool. Yeah, it's the one way you could guaranteed get a dug in against Blissey in that type of scenario, and then you win with the stuff in the back. But yeah, Wonder Guard is really not relevant. It's going this high because it's a broken fucking ability. If it were on anything else, it'd be insane. But I'm putting it here basically because, like, in theory, it should be really busted. But in practice, it's really nothing special. It's probably one of the worst abilities in this tier. Okay, so that's every ability in ADV. Ranked. They're all put in tiers. In my opinion, I think the best ability in ADV, I think the top 3 are... it's kind of hard, actually. The top 5... Oh, God. If I had to rank the top tier, it'd be Serene Grace... 2, 3, 4... I said 7 in top tier. Serene Grace would be 7th. Arena Trap 6th, I guess. Levitate 5th. Sand is like top 3 for sure. I guess Intimidate 4th. And then top 3 are Pressure, Natural Cure, Sandstream. Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. But yeah, it's really just like... So the best ability... I think the best ability in tier is Sandstream by far. I think if you don't think it's Sandstream, there are a couple valid choices. Like, I think Pressure is a great choice. I think Natural Cure is a good choice. I think Arena Trap is... I think anything in the top tier is valid as the best ability. But I would say, personally, Sandstream just takes the cake. It's way better than... the fact that it does that much for the metagame is, like, insane to me. Like, it's easily the most, like, meta warping defining ability in the tier, even though all it does is just set sand. Really, it's not super versatile. It's not... The ability itself is not super versatile. Like, you're not... There aren't many games, unless you're playing against, like, a weather clear team, where you're gonna need to, like, be like, okay, I need to pivot my sand in this type of way. Like in Black-White, if you're playing, like, sand versus rain, you need to, like, pivot your T-Tar in on specific turns to cut off Tentacruel Rain healing, or to set sand versus a Politoed so you can Pursuit Trap it or something like that. There's nothing really like that in this tier, outside if you're playing, like, very specific weather clear teams, like versus a Kingdra team or versus, like, a Sun Cheese team. Those do exist. They're rare, but they exist. But yeah, those types of things are not things you really have to take into super account. And if you have a T-Tar, you usually own them anyway. But that being said, Sand is such a broken, important ability. I hate playing without it, personally. I think Sand is so... I use T-Tar in, like, 85% of my games for that reason, because I just think it's so valuable. And T-Tar itself is so versatile that it's like, it makes Sandstream that much better. It doesn't... You never feel like you're including Sand on a team... Well, sometimes you include Sand on a team because you want Sand, but a lot of the time you're putting Sand on a team because you want Tyranitar, which is what's so interesting and cool to me about Sandstream, is that, like, Sandstream, yes, it's very broken, but it never, to me, never feels like Sandstream is the sole reason why you're putting something on a team, right? Why you're putting T-Tar on a team. It feels like you're putting T-Tar on a team because you want T-Tar on the team, which is something that's really interesting because it doesn't decrease my, like, value of Sandstream at all. It's just like kind of something that's interesting to note, really. It's insane. But yeah, so this is my ranking of all the abilities in ADV. This took an hour and 10 minutes, which is longer than I thought it would take, and I don't know if I really did that great of a job, but I might come back on this in 2 days and be like, yeah, this fucking sucks. But on recording on November 2nd, 2023, this is my take as to where all of the abilities tend to lie. But yeah, I think that's going to be all for now. Oh yeah, one more thing. If you made it to the end of this video, Can you just like tell, like, reply if you made it to the end of the video, reply to someone in the comments and tell them to brush their teeth. All right, that's an important reminder. All right, well, I will see you guys whenever I decide to make a video next. But this is that's all for now. Yeah, see ya.